air hung heavy in the dimly lit basement, an unsettling mix of dampness and decay. Shadows stretched across the walls, twisted and contorted, as if they were alive, dancing to an unheard rhythm. The faint smell of mildew clung to the air, and the only sound was the soft trickle of water dripping somewhere in the darkness. It was a place that seemed to breathe, to pulse with an energy that felt both foreign and ominous. This was no ordinary basement. For years, it had been a storage space for old furniture, forgotten memories, and the remnants of a life once lived. But recently, something had changed. Whispers of an entity lurking in the shadows began to circulate, tales of a presence that defied explanation. It all started when the Thompson family moved into their new home, a charming, century-old house on the outskirts of town. At first glance, it was a perfect fit for them. 3 bedrooms, a backyard for their kids to play in, and a cozy front porch that beckoned for lazy afternoons. Yet it was the basement that intrigued them the most. The children, Mia and Jake, often dared each other to venture down the creaky stairs, their laughter echoing through the hallways as they spun tales of monsters and ghosts. But as the days turned into weeks, the laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling tension that gripped the family. One evening, while the children were playing upstairs, Emily, the mother, decided to tackle the clutter in the basement. She flicked on the single bulb hanging from the ceiling, casting a weak glow over the piles of boxes and old furniture. As she began to sort through the remnants of the previous owner's life, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. A chill skated down her spine, and she paused, listening intently. The silence was thick, oppressive. Then, just as she was about to brush it off, she heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible, yet distinct. "Get out." The words sent her heart racing, and she spun around, expecting to find someone standing behind her. But there was only darkness, and the shadows seemed to thicken, closing in around her. She backed away slowly, the boxes looming like silent sentinels, guarding secrets she wasn't meant to uncover. That night, she confided in her husband, Mark. He brushed it off as stress from moving, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The following days only brought more unsettling occurrences. Objects would shift slightly. A doll that had been placed on a shelf found lying on the floor, and the air grew heavier, charged with an inexplicable tension. Despite her growing unease, Emily decided to investigate further. She researched the house's history, discovering that it had been built in the early 1900s by a family that had mysteriously vanished without a trace. The only remnants of their existence were the crumbling walls and the whispers that echoed through time. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rumbled outside, Emily gathered her courage and ventured back into the basement. She felt a strange pull toward a corner she had previously ignored, a small, boarded-up alcove that seemed to call to her. With trembling hands, she pried the boards away, revealing a narrow opening. Inside, she found a dusty trunk, its leather cracked and worn. It was locked, but the rusted padlock had seen better days. With a deep breath, she forced it open, the hinges groaning in protest. As the lid creaked upward, a musty smell wafted out, carrying with it a sense of dread. Inside, she uncovered a collection of old photographs, faded and yellowed with age. They depicted the family who had lived there, their faces frozen in time, eyes staring back at her with an unsettling intensity. But it was what lay beneath the photographs that sent chills down her spine, a small, intricately carved wooden figure, its features grotesque and twisted. It felt cold to the touch, and as she held it, the temperature in the room dropped. The whispers returned, louder this time, swirling around her like a tempest. "Leave this place," they urged, but curiosity mingled with fear, keeping her anchored in place. That night, as Emily lay in bed, sleep eluded her. Shadows danced across the walls, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. She could no longer ignore the feeling of being watched. Desperate for answers, she turned to the internet, seeking stories of others who had encountered this entity. What she found sent shivers through her. Local forums were filled with tales of similar experiences in homes across the area, an entity that thrived in the darkness, feeding off fear and anxiety. People spoke of strange occurrences, of feeling a presence lurking just out of sight, and of the deep, unsettling feeling that something was very wrong. As the days passed, Emily's anxiety grew. The children began to notice the change in their mother, their laughter replaced with concern. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Jake, the youngest, spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, there's something in the basement." Emily's heart sank. The children had been hearing the whispers too. She exchanged a glance with Mark, and they both knew it was time to confront the unknown. Together, they decided to take action, determined to face whatever entity had taken residence in their home. That weekend, they gathered supplies, flashlights, sage for cleansing, and a camera to document their experience. As they descended the stairs into the basement, the air grew thick with tension. The light flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows across the walls. They stood at the bottom, the darkness swelling around them like a living creature. Mark held the flashlight ahead, illuminating the alcove where Emily had found the trunk. With a deep breath, they approached it together. "If there's something here, we're not afraid of you," Mark declared, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Emily nodded, clutching the wooden figure tightly. As they began to speak, a cold breeze swept through the basement, snuffing out the light. They were plunged into darkness, the oppressive silence wrapping around them like a shroud. Panic surged through Emily as the whispers returned, louder and more frantic. "Get out, get out," they echoed in her mind, drowning her thoughts. The flashlight flickered back to life, and in that brief moment of illumination, they saw it, a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its form indistinct, yet undeniably present. Mark reached for Emily, his grip firm as he pulled her close. "Let's go," he urged, but something held her in place. The figure seemed to pulse, drawing her in with an inexplicable force. "Stay," it whispered, its voice a chilling melody that slid through her mind like ice. In a moment of clarity, Emily raised the wooden figure high, her voice rising above the cacophony. "We command you to leave. You have no power here." The shadows flickered, and the whispers faded into a low hum, almost as if the entity was momentarily stunned. Mark joined her, his voice strong. "This is our home now. You must leave." With that declaration, the air in the basement shifted. The coldness receded, and a warmth spread through the room. The shadows shrank back, retreating into the corners. The figure in the darkness seemed to dissolve, leaving behind a lingering chill that faded like a distant memory. Breathless, they stared at each other, the weight of their shared experience settling between them. Had they truly confronted the entity, or was it simply a figment of their imagination? In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the basement lightened. The whispers grew faint, almost imperceptible. The children resumed their laughter, and Emily and Mark began to feel at home once more. Yet, they remained vigilant, aware that the unknown still lingered just beyond the shadows. As they settled into their lives, they couldn't shake the feeling that the basement still held secrets, stories waiting to be uncovered. Emily often found herself drawn back to that corner, staring into the darkness, seeking answers. One night, unable to sleep, she ventured down alone, the beam of her flashlight cutting through the gloom. She stood before the alcove, the wooden figure in hand, its presence a reminder of what they had faced. The air was still, but a whisper brushed against her ear. "You cannot escape me." The chilling reminder sent her heart racing, but this time she was not afraid. She had confronted the entity, faced the unknown, and emerged stronger. The basement would always hold its mysteries, but she was ready to face whatever came next. In the end, it wasn't just a haunting. It was a lesson in courage, in confronting fears that lurk in the shadows. The entity in the basement would always be part of their story, a reminder that sometimes the greatest unknown is not what lurks in the dark, but what lies within ourselves.